program coordinator for Women's Leadership Project. Women's Leadership Project is an organization that works throughout South Los Angeles and Los Angeles, civic engagement, mentoring to young women of color, also Latinx, and all BIPOC youth. Again, we are here today to talk about sex trafficking. Again, this is a very important matter. As we know, Black women and Black youth are at the highest rates underrepresented in being sex trafficking victims. And what is human trafficking? As we know, human trafficking is the act of inducing, recruiting, and or transporting by force, fraud, or coercion a person into sexual acts or labor against their will. As we know, this is an important matter. I'm here with my colleagues as well. Jessica, everyone give it up for Jessica. And also we have some staff in the house that are standing here. Bree, where you at? Bree. Our resident artist, just love to shout out our WOP staff. And last but not least, this is Sikivu, our leader, who holds it down and definitely brings down the force as it is being in this mission to bring awareness to sex trafficking.
Thanks so much, Pam and Phillip, for being here. As some of you may know, this is Human Trafficking Awareness and Prevention Month. And we really want to, throughout this event, amplify the fact that Black women and girls represent the highest population of trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation in the U.S. And this is despite mainstream media's representation of white women as being the primary victims. And this certainly has been a narrative that has continued as we see the uproar over the Epstein files. But we're here to tell you that over 40% of sex trafficking victims are Black women and girls, with middle school Black girls being at the epicenter of this crisis. Black girls who are between the ages of 12 to 14 here in South LA are being disproportionately targeted. They are being policed, they are being criminalized, they are being victim blamed and shamed, they are being gaslighted for the harm, abuse, and exploitation that they experience on the regular that is normalized under this regime of misogynoirist rape culture. We call it, as we see it, it is rape culture. And so according to the National Black Women's Justice Institute, traffickers admit that if caught, they believe that trafficking Black women would land them less jail time than trafficking white women. Now that is not a revelation to many of us in this audience, but we have to ask continually, why is it that we see such a dramatic, insidious, and toxic escalation in trafficking in our communities? We can look at the intensification of the institutionalization of misogynoir, which means anti-Black misogyny. We can look at the intensification of anti-Blackness across every segment of AmeriKKK. We can look at deepening economic inequality and disparity in our communities. We can look at hypersegregation. We can look at mass incarceration. And we can break down the fact that Black girls are being adultified in record numbers everywhere in our society, which means that they are being deemed as hypersexual, as expendable, as criminal, and unrapeable. And this basically goes back to a whole legacy of racially capitalist enslavement. That is the legacy that we are living when we talk about this epidemic of commercial sexual exploitation that is robbing the childhood of our Black girls. And so certainly we saw a lot of these themes and narratives recycled ad nauseum in the recent P. Diddy trial, as well as the earlier R. Kelly trial. Thank God that Predator is behind bars. But we had so many Black girls and Black women who stepped up courageously, made themselves vulnerable as plaintiffs, spoke truth to power about the normalized abuse years, generations, decades of abuse that they were experiencing at the hands of powerful Black celebrity males. They were routinely dismissed, and they were vilified. And it wasn't just from the usual white supremacist dominant culture, it was from our community. So we have to be real about that, about the toxic environment that we're steeped in, and to become activists for our Black girls, to make sure that they are seen, heard, and protected unapologetically, period. And so with that, to say a little bit about the film, this was a film that I wanted to create as a prevention, education, and basically a justice tool. It involves a Black female protagonist who is in foster care, and we know that foster care youth are absolutely being targeted disproportionately, particularly Black girls in foster care. And so she is an aspiring aerospace engineer. She is en route to college. She is non-conforming. She is intellectually curious. And so she's struggling with coming of age issues in addition to grooming and victimization. But yet she is anchored and affirmed and reinforced and loved within this friendship that she develops with another non-conforming Black girl who identifies as queer. And so I wanted to bring all that to bear in this portrayal, the intersectional dynamic that informs Black girls' victimization, trauma, but also their resilience, their imagination, their creativity. And the fact that we can, as adults who care, reinforce, and love Black girls, we can pour into them and allow them to blossom as critically conscious, transformative justice change agents when we exercise prevention that is Black feminist, that is Black womanist, that is anti-racist, and queer affirming, because queer and gender expansive youth also have some of the highest rates of sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation victimization. We shot the film in the Crenshaw District at Station 54 with the assistance of City Council District 8 and Spirit Awakening, another community-based organization. And I want to give a shout out to my amazing cast and crew who were in the trenches on this. If you want to stand or wave. Phillip, Miss Jessica, Nicole. And we have one more cast member, our tiniest cast member who could not make it, Ori Jai. She's making her debut with this film. I also want to shout out my amazing, phenomenal mentee students who were crew members. Clay, Bree humbly added lyrics to one of the songs that you're going to hear in this rap lyrics, bars. And Phillip. And last but not least, Ashanti. And so, unfortunately, our DP, our director of photography, oh, there she is! Yes! Our fearless leader. Sika is our director of photographer and editor. So, shout out. And so I also want to thank family, friends, and community who are here as our village, who are in the trenches, again, making sure that Black girls are seen, heard, and protected. We could not have done this work, not just with the film, but the work that we do in the community with the coalition building without your love and reinforcement. I want to thank my parents who are, oh, my mom sitting right here. My brother snuck in somewhere. Back there, no. And his spouse, Azizi, came all the way out from Where?
Oh, wait.
It's an Inland Empire. Yeah? Okay. So anyway, we're going to get started. One more thing before we begin. This film, as you may ascertain, has references to sexual abuse. So if anyone in the audience wants to take time for self-care, know that you have the space to do that. Thank you so much for coming. And then we're going to have a phenomenal panel after the screening with Dr. Stephany Powell, Abene, Clayton, and Fantayjah, Callis. Thank you.
So our panelists today, just giving you a little information about them. We have Abene Clayton joining us, and she is, wait, whoop, whoop, whoop. All right. She is a reporter in the Guardian U.S. West Coast Bureau and is also a lead reporter on the Guns and Lies in America series, launched in 2019. Her work focuses on the impacts and solutions to community violence. She started covering gun violence in her hometown of Richmond, California, and is now based in Los Angeles, where she covers the evolving dynamic of gun violence around through people closest to the issue. Round of applause for that. Awesome. Now I'm gonna say this name with respect and power, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I believe names are supposed to be pronounced the right way, okay? So Fantayjah?
Yeah,
Fantayjah, put some respect on her name. Callis, she serves as a CSEC Action Team Advisory Board for the National Center for Youth Law and is the Survivor Leadership Program Coordinator at the Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking, CAST. She is a member of the Homeless Youth Forum of Los Angeles and previously served on the Olivia E. Mitchell City Youth Council representing District 15. Fantayjah has developed and facilitated curricula focused on life skills, job readiness, and computer literacy for survivors and at-risk youth. She is passionate about CSEC prevention through workforce development, self-esteem building, and life skills training. Let's give another round of applause. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Stephany Powell, who is a noted subject matter expert on human trafficking, child abuse, sexual exploitation, and victim-centered direct services. Her unusual background as an executive in social services, as well as a former police sergeant, gives her insight into complex challenges facing the U.S. justice system. She is widely consulted on trauma-informed public policy questions. And since 2013, she has educated over 20,000 people on civil and criminal suspects of sexual exploitation, including international audiences through the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, and has assisted approximately 2,000 survivors of human trafficking with employment, court assistance, housing, and even helped deliver a baby, period. Dr. Powell has been featured in media ranging from Newsweek to the Los Angeles Times to Fox News. Okay. And I believe, I'm sorry, last but not least, we have Alma, who I do not have a bio on, but I know the bio because she is one of our WOP students at Hamilton High School. And she also does a lot for the organization, and she'll get more into herself and kind of what she does for the organization. So WOP is a youth-led organization, so don't forget to test that in as well. Are y'all ready for our panel questions? All right, so I'm gonna pass the mic over there, and you guys can hold it. What themes or story elements resonated with you in this film? If you are a survivor, please feel free to respond from that lens. Who would like to open that question?
I think something that resonated with me, it's not always a lot of focus on Black girls being trafficked in South LA. A lot of even receiving services as a youth, my advocates were white ladies from Alaska. And I'm like, ma'am, how are we connecting here? But I that's something that I appreciated about the film. And also I think having solid friends, being able to bring some realism to your life, I think that's such a valuable point. And often people don't focus on
spot on in terms of everything that happens with a victim of trafficking. I think what impacted me at the very end is how when she knew things were going wrong and she pulled on her innocence in order to help her project her future while she's looking through the telescope. I thought that was very powerful.
For me, like was mentioned in my bio, I cover gun violence, but one thing I've noticed is that the places where gun violence is most prevalent, you also have all these other issues, including sex trafficking. And a part of what I do in my work is I try to focus as much as I can on like Black women and girls. They're left out of the conversation around violence so often, and often when I do get a chance to talk to them, there have been all of these other things that have been like compounded on top of the violence. So when I was watching the film, it just made me think of how all of these things are like interconnected, you know what I mean? Whether it's like income, being in the foster system, like a lot of public health people will describe like the friend that she had as like a protective factor. Like how many things does this young woman have in her life to insulate her and protect her from predators? And a lot of those same things can protect people from being on like either side of the gun. So I think just seeing how all of this is interconnected, all of these things happen in the same communities, and there are so many things that we're trying to fight against and like combat at the same time. I feel like it all kind of was represented really well in this film, and that's what like came up for me the most.
I would definitely say that the most stark like connection that I got from this movie is that she wants to be an aerospace engineer, and I also want to be an aerospace engineer. I mean, I've been in community college since I was in sophomore year. I'm trying to get my associates. I'm trying to be smart. I'm trying to be better. She talks about like quadratic equations and pre-calculus, and that like really it makes me so happy. Like, it makes me so giddy. But what really makes me, and also I also wear my headphones all the time, but representation matters. And I don't ever think that I have seen in like a film or a movie a girl who, alongside with near come sex trafficking and domestic violence, I don't think that I've seen that. And for her also to be intelligent and really smart and forthgoing and wanting to break the bar, wanting to kind of be better and be able to achieve, I think that's something that's gonna be able to help me fuel my journey. And one thing that also makes me happy is that you guys are also able to see this. So when you guys are able to see movies and films like this, that lets you know that people like me exist. Because I'm not sure if you would have known that, hey, in the middle of South Central, I'm trying to become an aerospace engineer. I mean, these things are important, and I'm very glad that Dr. H was able to kind of pull on the community around them and, recognize that we do exist. So that would be my best connection. Yeah.
Thank you guys for that insight. Very powerful insight. My next question with that information leads to, what are some of the major issues that inform sex trafficking here in Los Angeles?
You know that to me, and I think that's what drives my work, because, so as you know, I was LAPD for 30 years, and I ran a vice unit. And I ran that vice unit out of the valley. But what I noticed was, and especially back then, because Harry Tubman was my classmate, I'm kind of old. She looked at me like, really? You know Harry was from LA, did you? But what I noticed was, back then we did a lot more arrests of the women and girls. And I'm working the valley, but I'm arresting people that look like me, which kind of drove me, once I retired, to become a victims advocate, as well as an executive director for a nonprofit org that assisted adult victims of human trafficking, seeing it from both ends. And so I thought that was startling. When you look at the statistics of 40% of victims of human trafficking are African American women and girls. But then when you look at the other side of the statistic, that we only make up 15.5% of the female population in the US. That makes it more startling. So people always ask why. It's not a hard ask why when you look at things like the justice system, discrimination, when you look at what it really means to be black here in America, when you look at what Malcolm X said about black women being that were not protected, and all those things come into play when you look at the reasons why, when you look at poverty, when you look at the foster system, it really begins to make sense. But the other caveat of this that I think is really important is that it's not only black women and girls that are in the foster system, it's also our young girls that are going to colleges that are extremely vulnerable in this as well. So this could really be anybody's daughter, and that's what also drives up the percentages as well.
I think a lot about like vulnerabilities and like the factors that lead someone to not just live in a community where there's like poverty, low access to resources, education, and some of the like professional opportunities that people in other places enjoy. And I'm always wondering like, well, what are the differences between someone who lives here but does not necessarily end up trafficked and someone who does? And in my mind, I think a lot about like sexual violence, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it can range from walking down the street when you're like 12, 13 and getting catcalled and sexually harassed by like grown ass men, all the way up to the more literal things that we saw the main character in this film go through. And when people grow up with that level of sexual violence and then you're turned around and like blamed for it, which is something I see often, particularly directed at young black women and girls. Oh, she's fat, she got that mouth, and all of these stereotypes, I feel like are things that people don't necessarily think about when we're talking about sex trafficking. I think they're like, oh, well, she got turned out, she was in the wrong place. But I feel like the way we talk about things, like I'm always thinking about like narrative and perception, because it does equal real world violence. And the way that I see black women and girls talked about, the way I've heard us be talked about growing up, I think has a lot to do with it. And those sort of messages get embedded in you and adds to that level of vulnerability that can put you in a situation where you meet someone who's older and they give you some attention, or maybe you get access to funds that you wouldn't have been able to get otherwise, and you have all these negative messages in your mind, and you think you may have met someone who can like take you out of that situation, and the next thing you know you're trafficked in a circumstance you never would have expected. And I think the way we like talk to and about our vulnerable young black women and girls really has a role to play that like deserves more exploration, you know?
Again, as we're up here talking to experts, when I think about LA and even sex trafficking, the conversation, you mentioned something that's important. Some of these things that are shaping this, we think about pop culture, we think about even the images that we're seeing on TV, what shows are being, pushed down our youth's voices in their eye frame, right? So some of these messaging and other things, it's not a place of safety. So it makes me think that young women in LA need more safety when they're coming forward with some of these things, correct? What role do policing and criminalization of black youth and black girls play in trafficking?
I think the media plays a big role in trafficking, specifically with our youth. I think there's a lot of desensitization surrounding human trafficking, and I'm sorry, mental health, real y'all. there's a lot of desensitization of human trafficking and normalization of exploitation as a whole. And like a lot of the times, like the money is glamorized, all the good things are glamorized, but you don't see the hardship. You don't see like the lack of consistency regarding actually people making the money. You don't see people not being able to keep their money. So I think that's like the biggest factor.
You know, it's so true. When you're working with survivors, they'll tell you that it's like all fun and games till you turn that first trip, or it's all fun and games until the pimp is dissatisfied with you. So I think that's absolutely so spot on. Of course, you know you'll live experience next week. As it pertains to, I can speak to the policing aspect of it. One of the other things that I do, I go across the country and I teach law enforcement how to have a more victim-centered approach when it comes to working with victims of trafficking. So I've gone throughout the U.S. as well as working in Trinidad and Tobago doing the same thing. And so it's very interesting. I'm very happy with the paradigm shift, although there's still more work to be done. But law enforcement is to the point, I can speak for LA, is that they're working alongside nonprofit organizations. So as an example, when I was the executive director of Journey Out, we would work with law enforcement, and so therefore, if they were doing a sting, what they would do, I had a social worker, as well as a survivor, as a team, working in that police station to be able to give services right then and there, just to make sure that she did not get booked, because that was important. What that ended up parlaying into was that it didn't matter whether or not the person said they were a victim of human trafficking, because victims of human trafficking don't self-identify. So anyone that needed assistance would not get booked, and therefore they would call our nonprofit organization. And that trend has continued. So I'm starting to see the shift. The shift that I'm also seeing as extremely, extremely important is that when looking at law enforcement and legislation of going after the sex buyers, going after the demand, and holding them accountable is extremely important. So I'm seeing that change, and that's a happy change to see. When you talk about LA, first of all, California is the #1 state for trafficking. Houston is the #1 city. But when you go down Figueroa, that's where you will see the horrors of human trafficking, where you will see young girls that are out there. By the mere fact that they're under the age of 18 years old and in commercial sex, they are automatically considered to be victims of human trafficking. Adults are also victims of human trafficking as well. But just know, just because that victim turned 19, her victimization does not end. And as a result, as she moves on, the victimization, the trauma, stays with her for the rest of her life. And that's where the importance of nonprofits come in, to be able to help to make that person whole and help them on their journey, whatever their journey is, to get where they need to go. And so that's why law enforcement does play an important part in this, because 9 times out of 10, unfortunately, they're going to be the first point of contact. So what they do afterwards is going to be so important. And if they're working with a nonprofit organization, that is so critical to this. And arresting sex buyers.
I would say, and this is just gonna be really, because that was a really good synopsis. That was very detailed. But I would say that one thing that is important is the culture and the culture that police officers often go into situations with inevitably. I feel that oftentimes, as soon as they would see a victim of sex trafficking, especially if she were African American or a person of color, the immediate idea might be that, you know, there's not, she's grown enough, she can't be a victim, she knows what she's doing. And I think that idea is what leads so many down this kind of rabbit hole of just, I mean, the horrors. And I think that changing that idea, and especially talking about nonprofits, which come with a different culture, they come with the mindset of wanting to help these girls instead of actually just following the laws and arresting them for essentially breaking those laws. And then there's also the theme of adultification that we talk about a lot with WLP, is you grow up fast because of your situation, and then you're treated as such. So you miss out on a very large part of your childhood. And so people don't see you as the child that you are, especially in cases like this, because when you talk about just turning 19, I mean, 18, you're still a child, 17, you're still a child, 16, it goes below that. So I feel like in order for this to change alongside with nonprofits, the culture for our people, but especially our police officers who are making that first contact, is extremely important, because they're oftentimes determining what life is going to be like with that girl from that point. So.
As we know, Black girls and Black women are overrepresented in these areas and not seen as survivors and treated as such. As we know, there is a certain care and concern and fragility that should go into, you know, taking care of our Black sisters and Black daughters and Black aunts and grandmothers, right? I think too, when we think about historically even having spaces and safe spaces to come forward and have conversations has not been something that has been done. So we're trying to break these generational curses, and this is why, again, you're here today. So again, thank you. Why do you believe Black women and girls are disproportionately vulnerable to trafficking and CSEC victimization?
I think Black girls specifically are vulnerable for CSEC because they are oftentimes over-sexualized. We talked about the adultification of Black girls. I know I have a gifted child, and so oftentimes she's 12, and so oftentimes she's so highly intelligent that I forget she gonna do kid stuff. Like she playing with her little sister in the water in the bathroom. Like, you know, but I think the adultification of Black girls, the over-sexualization, and also because of those factors, we often see that like when our girls go missing, like it's always assumed that they're runaways. There's a lack of care. There's a lack of empathy that has been systematically present for so very long. And I think that's something we need to step away from. Like we need to see the kids as kids. You know?
To add on to that, to what both of y'all said around like who gets to be a victim, you know what I mean? This is again, I like am thinking through the like kind of gun violence coverage I do mindset, and a lot of what I'll write about is like Black people at large are often not seen as victims. It's like, well, what did you do to put yourself in that situation? Whether you're talking, I've talked to a lot of like moms who have lost their kids, particularly their sons, to gun violence. And one of the first things they say to me is like, just so you know, he wasn't this, he wasn't that, he wasn't this, you know, and that's immediate, you know, right after hello. And so when we're talking about particularly Black girls and sex trafficking, there's zero grace. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's conversations that you'll hear people have, again, I mentioned the word fast, like how many girls have been called that simply because they're growing breasts, because they're interested in boys or are like gender expansive, and it's assumed that they're gonna like use their sexuality to be manipulative, when in reality, they probably don't even understand what's going on with them and deserve the same little birds and the bees, soft touch conversations that I think we see in like white images and in white representation, and black girls just do not get that grace. From the time you're grown, it's like, if you have a little switch in your hip, if your voice is any certain way, like people are attacking you. And I understand that, you know, especially older black women in our community, there might be a protective thing there, right? Like, we don't want to see you be assumed to be anything that you're not. But it's like, well, usually, like, tough love has really been oversold. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes. I always say, life is hard, I need my love soft. And I think that is something that black girls deserve, right? Especially the ones who are coming from these communities where, like, things are already super tough. And I think that, like, outside of all of the, like, systemic factors that experts like Fantayjah, I know you're so familiar with, I really feel like the way we talk about, relate to, and look at black girls when they walk in a room is important. The way your teacher sees you, right? Are you assuming, oh, she's bad, maybe she got ADHD, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's this, she's that, she's disruptive. And it's like, why is there no care or attention or thought taken to, like, letting them be kids, or maybe assuming, like, maybe that's just a child. And I think that, again, isolates black girls, can really impact your self-esteem and make you vulnerable, again, to these predators who sound like they're offering you something different, that they see you in a way that no one else does, but in reality, they're just trying to, like, extract from you and, like, sell you. And it's really horrible to see these themes continue over time with what feels like very little interruption. But thankfully we have groups like WLP, we have conversations like these, folks like y'all who will come and, like, listen to all of us talk, because, like, we all have some updating to do in our perceptions of black girls, women, gender expansive youth, etc. And it's already been, like, too long of a road, too many victims, too many horror stories, to where people, like, just don't get it at this point, you know?
It made me think, you mentioned something, having the idea of sisterhood and having organizations where you can go and let your hair down and be heard and be seen and be protected and be loved. So I want to shout out, first of all, the amazing panel. I have one more question for y'all, but can we give a round of applause for our experts up here? Our amazing, knowledgeable black women who are just amazing and have fought the fight and are on the front line doing the work. It is not easy to do the work. It's hard. And like she said, some of the stuff is generational. It continues. It perpetuates. It grows uglier and bigger. And it takes groups like this and people to come forward and to acknowledge that it's happening and to try to make change. So I have one more question for you all. And then we're shifting because, again, we could be here all day talking about take our shoes off, start stomping on the feet, and start stomping in here about the anger and the travesty that's going on. But my last question to you is, are there any anti-trafficking and or gender-based violence prevention organizations or resources that you would like to shout out for our audience?
We actually have a big lack in prevention. When I think about prevention, I think about our youth workforce centers. I think about our libraries. They have wonderful classes. Our parks and recreations, like the one near me has guitar lessons and $10 soccer skills building and all these different things. So I think leaning into those type of things, like, it's nothing like job readiness, finding community groups for the girls. Some of my best friend came from a space of growth, somewhere I went to go learn and better myself, and I was surrounded by people that wanted to learn and better themselves. And so, yeah, I think that's extremely important. Tap into community resources, go to the library, y'all could borrow a pot, extension cord, all type of stuff up there. Like, but yeah, leaning into those resources, building their skills and empowering them.
I think it's really important to support nonprofit organizations that are doing the work. So nonprofits such as Journey Out, Saving Innocence, Forgotten Children, Restoration, Diversion Services, out of Compton. Because doing this work is not easy. Doing this work for these nonprofits, they need money, they need volunteers, they need the help, because there's an extreme gap when we talk about resources. I also have a curriculum for, I asked first, because I usually don't even talk. But I have a curriculum, My Choice, My Body, My Rules. And it's based on, believe it or not, there was an assembly bill that came through, Assembly Bill 1227, that said that human trafficking prevention had to be taught in the schools in the state of California. And so that bill, although it was good, didn't come with any money or any direction. So before I was a cop, I was a school teacher for LA Unified. And so I actually wrote a curriculum. I wrote a student workbook and a facilitator guide as a resource for the schools. And it's solely, the foundation of that is built on self-esteem. Because, and then also I want to say, this also happens to boys and men as well. And so self-esteem is extremely important, and that's the focus in terms of my workbook and as a resource.
I really appreciate like the combination of resources that that both of my sisters here like mentioned, because it does take specific nonprofits, right, to like address and protect the women who are like most at risk or are already kind of in the sex trafficking world. And it also takes like preventative measures and resources that may have nothing to do specifically with sex trafficking, but can help people just like thrive, build up that self-esteem, see a future for themselves. I feel like so many of these things boil down to like, do you picture yourself in 10, 15 years having whatever you want? And I think for a lot of victims, the answer is like, no, you know, you're in survival mode. You see what's directly in front of you. So having like resources and opportunities to like build community, meet other folks, whether it's like extracurriculars or you meet up, Sip and Sonder, like rest in peace, but they had a like sewing circle. It closed, y'all. They had, and I love that. And they had like a sewing circle, right? Things like that. You know, if it's like fitness, going to step class, just being around other people and having life-giving opportunities is another thing that I feel like so many people don't think of as prevention.
Mark Keys Harris Dawson, say his name. I mean, for the longest time, I know our organization has been trying to come in contact with him, trying to, I guess, better this community. And one of the things that we're calling for was a youth space on Crenshaw in his office that is often vacant and not necessarily used, and also holding him accountable for, if you want to put your name up on Crenshaw, where are you on Crenshaw? Like, where are you at? Because what we have, I mean, miles, there's like a mile stretch of land that's not being used. I mean, we're telling that what construction is supposed to be starting. Construction was we're gonna build youth space. We're gonna build like parks and murals and things like that.
Well, where's that?
Where is it? I don't see it. So this is one of the things that we, especially at WLP, do, especially us interns. We've had multiple meetings with, I believe, his office and some people that we can try to get in contact to. It's the fact that we've had to go through so many loops to try to get the answers that we figured that we probably already knew, which is very disheartening. And so I feel like if we as a community, yes, we are an organization, and yes, you know, our youth voices are important, but if all of us know this, and all of us are aware of this information, and we can all kind of be like, yo, you're in office, what are you doing? I think that's very, very important. And me as an intern, even after I go to college, I will continue to press as many representatives as possible, because if you're here in office to serve us, then serve. Do what you were told to do. So that's my bit.
What's the role of social media in this trafficking? I've seen reports that there are social media outlets that actually advertise the services of young women, young men, boys. So what is being done about that?
Social media. You want to go first? Okay. Social media is helps to provide a platform for grooming. I think it's 55. I saw a stat: 55% of victims of trafficking were contacted as minors through social media. And then very quickly, there is a bill right now, COSA, Kids Online Safety Act. Right now, it's already passed the Senate. It has bipartisan support, but what it does, it holds social media platforms accountable with the algorithms, for parents. Roblox, real quick. Roblox, I just read this. Roblox said that they know that it's causing harm for children, but it's too big. If there's a law, they'll find a way. On Roblox, the average age on Roblox is 45 years old. Now keep that in mind, you have a lot of kids that are in there. Now I'm not saying every 45-year-old on Roblox is a predator, but a little creepy, but it does, but it is a holy ground for that, so yes.
Social media plays a big role in trafficking. Like I talked about earlier, there's a lot of glorification of the life, but also it gives more access. I think it's essential that I'm big on not hyper monitoring my kids, but restricting what they have access to. And I think that's what we need more awareness surrounding just cyber safety. Like I be telling my daughter, like stop telling people, like we be at the doctor, she'll be like, my name this is my mommy, and I go to, and I'm like, girl, like this, I get it, this the nurse, but don't be telling people what school you go to. But we need to bring more awareness to our youth surrounding cyber safety and the risks that come with it. And also talk more about intentions, because we don't have, it's not a lot of conversations surrounding intentions. So like the fact of like, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But yeah.
You caught me. I was gonna talk about Roblox and that whole kind of pipeline, but I can tell you from like a youth perspective, like and this, it's kind of sad, but like grooming online is insane. I'll probably tell you like one of the pipelines that happens. If you're a kid on Roblox, you're probably like 9, 8 years old. Someone tells you, oh, come play this game with me. Some of the games on Roblox are inappropriate, and then from their chat logs, they invite you to speak off the platform. And what happens is people use Discord to groom you even more. So I feel like social media, especially because social media is so viral, everyone uses it, everyone's so interconnected, and there is minor restrictions. There's minor restrictions because these apps are aware that children are using their platforms and the terrible things that are happening. They have the information, they have the data, but they know that data and being aware of that data and doing something about it doesn't make any money. Right. So it's either it's a long list of things that has to be done. But I can tell you from the perspective of a student, I've known like a handful of people who've been groomed online, and that leads them down this rabbit hole of having self-doubt, having low self-esteem. You have problems with your parents, and now it's like there's a need for like older attention. There's a need for people who don't have their best interests in mind. So it really is some of these things, they happen at home, but they also start online because of your lack of supervision. And so I feel like, along with many, that's not always like a single case, but that's what I know. That's what a lot of my friends know. So it's unfortunate, but it is true. Yeah.
Again, talking about like narrative, perception, etc. Like there are so many times where I'll go on Instagram and one of these like crime pages or whatever will be just like filming the girls on Figueroa, right? You know what I'm saying? Making like a spectacle of them. And I hate those videos so bad, and whenever I guess I'm like feeling too good, so I want to like bum myself out, I'll look at the comments and it'll be some of the vilest, most like, oh, they want all the stereotypes are present in there. And I think it's like those pages are so popular, one, because people do not trust like mainstream news, and as someone who works for like a mainstream news source, I totally get it, you know what I'm saying? So people do want what feels like more local and specific news, but there's also no context. There's also them benefiting from the algorithm and getting engagement off of filming these girls who are victims, right? And putting them out there like it's a game. And I think that contributes to the glorification that my sis talked about, and to the continued stereotyping and assuming that like, oh, they're out there because they want to be. There's no saving them. This is the life they want. Like, these are all of the things that like and people, like, for some people, what they see on social media is the only information they're gonna get about this subject. They're not gonna want to dig deeper and come to something like this and be like, oh, I see all these girls on Figure being like turned out, let me go and learn about it. That's not gonna happen. They're gonna comment something nasty, try to get some engagement and keep it pushing, right? And I think that it's a huge role again in like the narrative and perception that I talk about that like contributes to continued victimization and all of the vulnerabilities like we've discussed today.
So towards the end of the movie, there was the scene where the best friend was snapping some sense into our main character, right? And that right there felt so empowering, so good to see, so nice to know that, you know, your best friend isn't gonna just allow you to go down a rabbit hole of just darkness, right? I wanna know, it's kind of a two-parter. I wanna know how often that actually happens, and then also, how often that actually happens, and also what can we possibly do to allow the standing up for ourselves and our friends and our kin around us? How can we allow it to happen more? How can we like put more sense into ourselves so that we allow it to act as a domino effect unto our community?
This gonna sound sad, but I think like in my reality, I don't often see it being like, I see the opposite. I see friends dragging their friends into darkness, not in a sense of wanting to cause harm to their friends, but thinking that like, come live this life, come get this money. And so I often see that. But I think something that we can do is empower our girls, make girls girls. Something that I've always given my daughters positive affirmations. So right now I have a first grader, and she goes to a school that doesn't predominantly look like her. And so they're like, what are these balls in your hair and all these other things? And so like, as she was starting school, I was like, baby, like, if somebody walked up to you and was like, you ugly, what you gonna say? She like, I'ma laugh at them, and I'ma go tell the teacher. And I'm like, and why would you do that? And she's like, cause I know I'm beautiful, you know? And my oldest daughter also feels that way. Like, it's nothing that anybody can tell them to change how they feel about themselves. So I think it's so important that we build these positive self-images, and we build girls to encourage other girls.
I feel like there's a lot of the times, like to your point, it do sometimes, in a lot of cases, be a friend either finding out that you're, you know, being trafficked, or you're in a situation and they might leave you or abandon you, or like you said, it can be that opposite where it's like, well, let's go get this money together, you know, we're in the same situation. If you found a lick, let me see what's up, right? And we know that community and friendship can be used, it can be life-giving or it can be life-altering in like negative ways. And I think, again, to the point that you made earlier, like having resources and like opportunities in community for like particularly like Black women and girls to just like be together and like encourage each each other and to find like friendship and build authentic relationships can really like upend a lot of that.
I like to hear my reverb back, so when I come here, I sound like I'm not loud enough. But another round of applause for our amazing panelists. Again, it is important to have these conversations, to be here in community, sitting in power. Again, we talk about how can we change this, right? How can we do something about it? You do something about it by showing up. You do something about it by creating sisterhood. Each one teach one. If you guys ever heard of Ubuntu, I am because we are. So when you see a sister out there struggling, or you see something, you say something, you help, you connect to resources. Women's Leadership Project, again, the organization putting this on. Let's give a round of applause. Women's Leadership Project has been doing this work for over a decade, and again, these conversations. Oh, my bad. Oh, 2 decades. Oh, don't say that. We're not going to say that. Millennial strong. Hold on. 2 decades in the community, right? So from Crenshaw to South Los Angeles, even I don't like this one. You don't need it. This one hit hard? Okay. Again, we're doing work at King Drew, we're doing work at Gardena High School, Hamilton High School, and we're working with young women of color to again change and shift the narrative. I want to invite you before you leave today to make sure you either talk to one of these amazing panelists and experts and connect with them, and also come downstairs and connect with Women's Leadership Project. We have a table downstairs with some information so you can figure out how to get involved, stay involved. We're having services throughout the year that we do, and you can get involved in another way or
another. They wanna tell us that justice is a 7-letter dirty word. Crack that shit open, handshake, let it fly up, free as a bird. We're standing for black girls against the world's treasons. Dogs come and left and right. We're standing for black girls, hella high water seasons. Headlong into the fire, for fallen sisters, for hidden warriors. Stalking kitchens, assembly lines. We're standing for black girls, torching your misogyny. Call us out our names and see. We're standing for black girls against the world's treasons, putting silence and shame to the flame. No quarter to doubters, no quarter to reptile minds, hunting us down to tame my spirits. We're standing for black girls.